Thank you so much for joining us here on a Friday. I'm Marlon Bowling with you, and we are going to take a look at your ag commodity trade to wrap up our trading week here. We'll bring in a little expert analysis along the way with Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated. He is based in McHenry, Illinois. Let's go to the phones right now. All right, Rich, thanks for joining us as we wrap up our week here. What are you going to be focusing on today in the grain trade? Because the futures overnight were just about as flat as they could be.
It's about a good way of putting it here. Now we're looking at some bigger picture issues here for today's discussion. Obviously, the employment report was disappointing this morning. Only 98,000 new jobs added to non-farm payrolls. That has these outside markets more or less sitting standstill right now. In fact, the stock market not seeing much action, obviously, on the overnight futures here. Crude oil itself is up 9 here, so not much outside market influence. Instead, we're looking at the grain fundamentals, certainly this long-term situation for Tuesday. It looks like average estimates here for Tuesday's report from USDA have been released now. Corn stocks are seen increasing from 2.320 billion bushels last month, now 2.352, so higher corn stocks. Soybean stocks increasing as well, 435 million bushels last month, now 447, and wheat stocks as well, going from 1.129 to 1.147 billion bushels there.
And that report will be coming out Tuesday at 11 o'clock in the morning, right during the trading session, so we will get immediate reaction to the reports when they come out. Are we going to be getting any corn planting updates from USDA on their update Monday afternoon, or is there going to be a week out yet before we get those?
And actually, they did say on Monday's report that they will be releasing one here for Monday afternoon, which includes not just the stuff from last week, obviously winter wheat being a big issue here. They also will include corn planting on this one. So we will get a more or less light starting viewpoint on corn planting next Monday.
So what's going on in the other hemisphere, the southern hemisphere here, for corn and soybean production and the soybean harvest down there? I haven't heard much out of it, and I assume that means they're still looking at pretty good yields, and shipping is not much of a problem.
For the most part, that's exactly right. We've got, for right now, maybe discussions on the export pace. Might be something to have a small discussion about here maybe next week. But as of right now, harvest doing fine. In fact, latest numbers out of the Argentine harvest, which is more or less still just starting. The Buenos Aires Grains Exchange suggest about 5.9% harvested. So they are starting. It's still very early for Argentina, at least, but they are in the game now here as far as the harvest progress here.
I have a question here for you, Rich. With the turmoil going on overnight in Syria, of course, most folks know there was a missile attack on Syria on an air base there. And the markets overnight seemed to kind of take it in stride. There was not too much in the way of a knee-jerk reaction. We had a little bit of a higher crude oil trade there, but in general, when you have things like this happen, does that generally lead to maybe more investor money coming back into commodities? There used to be that thing they called a flight to quality in years past.
That's right here. So we've got questions about the flight to quality here, whether that means money rising back into the U.S. dollar, a safe haven, or going into commodities. As of right now, on either side of those, looks like not too much of an exciting issue. We are trading up maybe a mild 20 points here on the U.S. dollar index. As far as the overall issue, well, it looks like because there's so much, I'm actually going to say more or less agreement among all sides here that perhaps this was needed, that it's not seen as a major problem here for right now.
All right, thanks for the comments. I'll bring you back here in a little bit. We're talking with Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated in McHenry, Illinois. We'll have more when we come back right after this. Let's go back to our conversation here with Rich Nelson of Allendale Incorporated. He's based in McHenry, Illinois. And I want to talk now about this livestock trade yesterday. You know, we had the cash cattle market that developed yesterday, and there just wasn't much. And in fact, the only sales that we saw reported by USDA yesterday were some dress sales in Nebraska. And man, it was a wide range of trade as well. Kind of hard to interpret exactly what kind of trend that would be. But yet we had the futures turning around and going sharply higher, especially on the feeder cattle market yesterday. Did you hear anything through the grapevine as to what was driving that kind of action there?
You know, Probably some of the Thursday morning export sales. We talked about the grain numbers a little bit and also the livestock numbers a little bit here yesterday, but main issue for us on the livestock side is yesterday's beef export sales number did finally show perhaps we've got some of that Brazil meat scare story. Perhaps that did lead to some extra sales here in that previous week. In fact, we ran about 70% over last year in the same period. So in the first week of the Brazil meat scandal, we saw actually no change on U.S. exports. In fact, they were low. Now we saw some good numbers show up there. And also we had a report out yesterday that the Brazilian authorities had found about 8 problem meat samples from those 21 meat plants. So this issue is not going to go away completely that quickly, apparently, on the beef side.
When had they reportedly found that?
And I want to say that the story came out around 9:30, 10 o'clock here after the open, and that was the trade's discussion point there.
Okay, and of course, there were no sales on the Fed Cattle Exchange, so everything really quiet. And from what I gather on the sources I've been reading this morning, they say that the packers seem to be kind of short bought right now. So it's one of those games of playing chicken here between the packers and the feedlot managers out there that are still holding bids up there around 128 to 130, I understand today.
That sure is right. We're actually going to probably go till later today. I want to say around that 2, 3 o'clock time until we actually see some serious trading going here today. Quite a bit of a standoff. Yesterday's very light sales on the dress side, Nebraska, Iowa. I have at 195 and 200. So definitely some confusion there. Those light sales on the live side, I actually have as well, 122, 125. Those are almost too low to be believed. So bottom line for this cattle market, yeah, we're going to wait till late afternoon. Packers are sure that they've got the numbers this time around. Feedlots, well, they're going to say, hey, we've got some good demand going. Let's see what happens.
Real quickly, what do you see in the hog trade today? Because it rebounded sharply yesterday.
It sure did. We've got some good issues going on for the hog side for the very short term. People wondering whether the seasonal bottom is in place or not. So I think that's the key focus for us right now.
Good to talk with you, Rich. Thanks for all the input into the markets. We'll be opening everything up on the futures trade in about 7 minutes. Rich Nelson with Allendale in McHenry, Illinois. There's the table being set for today's futures trade. We'll see how stuff follows through today from the surge we had yesterday late.
Okay, thanks for laying the groundwork.